YouTube, it's Missy, and today I'm here to share with you guys a review on a very cute middle grade book. So before I start my review, I want to share with you guys the Jackaby series. This is by William Ritter. I first read Jackaby, which is his first book, back when it very first came out. I pre-ordered this. I fell in love with the cover, obviously. And then I fell in love with the characters, and then I fell in love with the author, and I talked to him on Twitter and he responded, which made me freak out. This was written or published in 2014, and it's about a paranormal detective who works on cases with the supernatural, vampires, werewolves, trolls, anything that is not the norm. And Abigail Rook is his assistant, which I love their dynamic. Their workship? That's not the right word. Their partnership is phenomenal. They don't have a love interest. It's more of a like a father-daughter or brother-sister kind of relationship. He looks after her, she looks after him, but it's totally platonic, and I absolutely loved the fact that it was platonic. And then we have Beastly Bones, which is just a continuation of the Jackaby series. They just are working on a different case. And then we have Ghostly Echoes and The Diarchy. Now, these two books I haven't quite finished yet in the series. I did start this, but I haven't finished. It's not because I don't like this series, but because it's bittersweet and I don't want it to end. And since I love William Ritter so much as a writer, I think his writing is fantastic. I just didn't want to stop reading. So I'm reading them very, very slowly. With that being said, when Brittany from Algonquin, I'm going to show you what the publishing house is, and you tell me how to say it. I looked it up on, you see that? Algonquin, or Algonquin. I looked it up on Google to see how to say that. It's a funny sounding publishing house. Regardless, Brittany over at Algonquin Publishing asked if I wanted to read William Ritter's new series, and I about died because yes, I do want to read his new series, and it is called, here's a picture, I'm not going to hold my Kindle anymore, it's called Changeling, or the Oddmire series. It's middle grade. I read the entire series out loud to my children the last week or so, and I fell in love. If you like fairy tale retellings or anything to do with the fairy tale realm, and you love reading to your children, or you just like middle grade in general, I highly recommend picking up this series. So the first book in this series comes out on the 16th of July. Today is the 10th when I am posting this video, and let's just get on with the review. So we have a goblin called Cull, and he really wants to take charge of his goblin horde. He wants to save the magic of the forest, the wild wood, and in order to do so, he decides to do something that hasn't been done for a very long time under the ruling of Chief Nud. Now, Chief Nud talked about it with an older witch that lived in the forest. He said, I promise I will never use another changeling in the human realm. I'll never take another human child and give them to the fairies, because, you know, he took her kid and she was really hurt by that. So he promised he would never do it again. But because of that promise, the wild wood has slowly started to lose its magic, and all of its magical creatures are starting to drift away from this wood and go to other places. And along with that, there is a thing, a dark entity that lives in the forest that attacks those around him because he's miserable and sad. Cull, our goblin main character, and he decides that he's going to help save the forest and make his chief proud and fix the goblin horde and bring back the magic, and he decides he's going to drop off this changeling and steal a human child. But like things usually happen, they go awry, and he ends up leaving both kids behind, which he freaks out about because he was supposed to be saving the goblin horde, and now he has definitely ruined their lives. So he leaves the baby. The baby turns, the changeling ends up mimicking the other boy, and then when the mom comes in to check on her son, she realizes now she's got 2 kids. Now the entire town knows about this, and so the boys, when we meet them, they're 13, and the town's been talking about how either one child could be the goblin, but because they've been in the town for so long, the people have eventually come to accept and love the other kid. So we have Cole and Tin. They're twins, obviously, because the changeling has mimicked his brother, and the mom has raised both children as her own. She doesn't know which one is hers originally and which one is the goblin baby, but she has come to love them both equally and will do anything for them. But both of them have a bit of mischief in each other, and they both tend to do naughty things. And it was fun for me and my kids to try to figure out who the goblin kid was. Like I said, there's Cole and Tin, and we're like, oh, I think it's Cole because he's always being naughty and Tin's not being naughty. But maybe it's Tin because he's got a silly name and yada yada. We were going back and forth, which was a lot of fun. So one day the kids are playing in their favorite tree, which is right at the edge of the wildwood, and they find a note. And they've been finding notes randomly over the years, and the note is written not in gibberish this type, but in actual human language. And it says, hey, if you don't bring the true goblin changeling to the goblin horde by the end of the day, your brother will die, and so will the entire goblin horde. And so Cole and Tin decide to steal away into the forest and let whatever happens, because they've always known that this was going to happen one day, that one of the siblings was going to have to leave the other, and they don't want them to die, and they don't want anything bad to happen. So they take off into the woods, and they meet a whole bunch of creatures, and they become friends with some of them, and they have some really bad times. They get lost for a little bit. They're worried that they're going to be found by monsters and other wicked creatures that live in the forest. There is a wicked witch that lives in the forest called the Dark Witch, or the Old Witch. I can't remember what she's called now. I know her real name. But yeah, it was so much fun, and the ending was really interesting. I'm excited to find out what happens to Cole and Tin now that they know who is who and what goes on with the wildwood now, because the evil witch of the woods said that they are able to come into her forest anytime, but just know that they are still in danger, but she welcomes them, that they are welcome. And I loved it. I smiled the entire time. And then when there are times that it got kind of heavy, like love and family wise, and as a mom of 2 boys, I choked up quite a bit several times in the book. Reading out loud to my kids anything emotional is very hard for me. Normally I can rush through it if I'm reading it to myself, but out loud I have to read every single word, and so I had to slow down and catch my breath, and Cole's getting choked up, and Cole the goblin, and Cole the son is getting choked up, and Tin's getting choked up, and the mom's getting choked up, and I'm just like, and Candlebeard's getting choked up, and everyone's crying, and I couldn't stop myself from crying. And this book was beautiful, and I loved it, and I cannot wait to buy the physical copy. It definitely needs to go on my kids' bookshelf. William Ritter is my auto-buy author anyway, but I cannot wait to find out what happens in the sequel, which stinks because now I'm gonna have to wait a whole year. William Ritter's pretty good about getting out his books every single year, and if the first one just comes out in the next week or so, I have to wait an entire year for the second one to come out, and that makes me very sad. So I want to thank Algonquin Publishing for allowing me to be a part of this book tour, for allowing me to have the ebook version of this really cute middle grade about goblins and changelings and humans and forest creatures. And Candlebeard reminded me of a kobold with his candle. So that was fun to read about. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the little heart is a candle and that it flickers, and oh my gosh, just the whole magic system and the world building was so cute. I absolutely loved it. If you're thinking, well, you're biased because you already like him, there was one thing that drove me crazy in this book. Just so that way, you know, we have equal happiness and sadness. William Ritter didn't have a word in his YA series that drove me crazy. One of my pet peeves is to repeat a word over and over and over again throughout a book or throughout a series. And in this particular book, he says, pursed, so-and-so pursed their lips. And it's said a million times. I was going to, because Kindles, you're able to do that, I was going to type in find and figure out how many times it was used. I think I'll leave that down in the description below, just so you know how irritated I was. If you have that as a pet peeve, I do apologize. Try to rush through that word and get on with the rest of the story, because the story is fun and beautiful, and the purse didn't ruin the story, but it did make my eye twitch a little bit every time I read it. And that is it. Again, thank you so much, Brittany, for contacting me and letting me be a part of this. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!